Welcome, Watchers of Illusion, to the Castle of Confusion, for this is the time of adventure.
Unless, of course, you're pushing 50, in which case, this is the time for a nice laydown after work. Hello and welcome to this Halloween special retrospective look back at Knightmare, the after-school TV game show which aired on ITV for 7 years between 1987 and 1994. It was heavily based on Dungeons and Dragons and hosted by the Dungeon Master, a Saxon knight called Treguard of Dunshelm, played by the legendary Hugo Myatt. In this video we'll be learning about the show itself, we'll be covering some of the merchandise that was available at the time, including books and games. We'll be looking at your comments and sharing a few personal memories, and we'll take a look at some of the more modern remakes and tributes that have been made more recently. Now, let's have a look and see if this old thing still works.
The only way is onward. There is no turning back.
Knightmare hit our screens in 1987 and stayed there until 1994. It ran over 8 seasons in that time, putting out a total of a respectable 112 episodes. It was one of those shows that we watch after school as it aired during the children's ITV slot, originating from the Anglia TV studios but showing across all local ITV stations, depending on what part of the country you were viewing from. The show's Dungeons and Dragons style was inspired by fantasy computer games of the time, resulting in a fantastical mix of live action and computer-generated dungeon adventure and exploration. Each game involved a team of 3 secondary school-aged children, verbally guiding a 4th teammate around the computer graphic dungeons via a TV screen. The 4th kid wore a helmet, the helmet of justice no less, that blocked their vision, so they were mostly blind as they wandered around the sets, all but for a small opening at the bottom of the helmet. This enabled them to pick up, manipulate and carry small objects. Most of the games involved a mix of simple puzzle solving, clue finding, object management and some interaction with on-set characters, but much of the challenge came from the team's attempts to verbally guide their blind teammate around rooms, away from traps and towards doorways. This often ended up being unintentionally funny, with players walking into solid walls, missing doors and falling straight into pits, as they frequently misheard or misinterpreted their teammates' instructions. The show was hosted by actor Hugo Myatt, who played the Dungeon Master, Treguard, with a suitably medieval-sounding voice which lent a decent amount of gravitas to the proceedings. His job was to explain what was going on to the viewers and the players, and he would often give in-game guidance to the team as they bumbled their way through the games. A number of other actors were also involved in the show, playing Treguard's assistants and various additional medieval characters within the dungeon areas. A modest selection of merchandise based on the show was produced over the years. A total of 7 books were made available between 1988 and 1994. They were a mix of storybooks, interactive fiction, choose-your-own adventure and puzzle books. There was also a board game released in 1992 by MB Games. It's a game for up to 4 players involving treasure collecting, spell casting, monster battles and riddle solving, and the ultimate aim is to be the first player to ascend Merlin's throne. If you'd like to see it in action, I can recommend checking out Stuart Ashens' 10-minute video exploring the gameplay. We also got a couple of video games too. Activision released a game for the 8-bit micros in 1987, and there was another from Mindscape in 1991 for the 16-bit Atari ST and Amiga. As is often the case, much of this stuff is still available to buy on eBay, and at relatively affordable prices, so if you want to sample any of this old Knightmare merch, that'll be the place to go. I did cover Knightmare briefly in a Halloween countdown video from 2 years ago, but I've been wanting to explore it in more detail for quite a while now. Knightmare hit my TV screen for the first time when I was 13, so I was just old enough to appreciate it. At that time for me it was essential viewing, mainly because I was heavily into video games at the time, and those graphics blew me away. Back then I was playing on ZX Spectrum and Sega Master System games, which are quite primitive. Now, I was aware of how cheesy it all was, with the dramatic overacting and weird medieval characters, but it was obvious to me even then that the show would not have been what it was without all that, and I love it for that reason, for going full nerd geek and fully embracing the camp surreal fantasy elements. Now, a big part of the reason it was a bit cheesy, and this used to make me a little bit uncomfortable at the time, was the terrible acting on the part of most of the kids who appeared on the show. The lifeless dialogue from the contestants, surrounded by professional actors and high-quality sets, kind of spoils the immersion. It is only to be expected, though, when you throw ordinary children into a show that would benefit from a certain amount of acting skill. I have to say, though, that looking back now on the dated-looking graphics, the contestants trying their best to perform convincingly, and the numerous, often humorous missteps that would lead a contestant to their in-game doom, this all adds to the nostalgic appeal, and I can truly understand why Knightmare has such a loyal cult following even today in 2024. I asked for your thoughts in the community post section of my YouTube channel and on my other social media platforms, so as usual, here are some of the things that you had to say about Knightmare. Mark Rowley on YouTube thinks Knightmare was great for its time, even though it looks outdated now. It felt groundbreaking, original, and was a mainstay of after-school kids' TV, and he still sometimes says the line from the show, "Where am I?" to his missus when he turns the bedroom light off. Sarah Kane on YouTube never missed it when she was growing up at the time. The now dated-looking graphics were groundbreaking back then and conjured up feelings of wonder. She points out how cheesy it was at times, but that those elements made the show what it was. The only thing she hated about this iconic show was the massive tarantula Ariadne, which would occasionally show up to terrify the contestants. Pee-wee Stairmaster on YouTube offered an honest confession and admitted to being petrified by the show, but still loved it anyway. Excellent Johnny 5 avatar there too, by the way. Reading Effigy on Bluesky Social dreamed of going on Knightmare as a contestant, but it never happened, and he never got to go on Funhouse either. Thomas Cook on YouTube reckons Knightmare has to be one of the kids' shows. He was in high school when the show first aired, and you knew the weekend was here when it came on the telly. Greatest of all time. And finally, Bretsky on YouTube wonders what not to love about the Commodore Amiga-esque graphics, kids shouting instructions, and a guy with a beard. He did watch it, although his sister was more of a fan, and he admits it must have been good due to the big cult following that it still has even now. Since the series ended in 1994, there have been a number of Knightmare-related developments. In 2002, the show's original creator, Tim Child, attempted to resurrect the show in a VR format which rendered the main player as an avatar in a fully 3D world. A pilot episode was produced, but it was generally not well received. You can see this episode for yourself on YouTube and make up your own mind. A 25th anniversary documentary was made in 2012, which features interviews with many of the actors and creatives from the show. This can also be viewed freely on YouTube. In 2013, a special one-off tribute episode was directed and produced by the original creator Tim Child, and recruited the talents of 3 of the original actors, including Treguard himself, Hugo Myatt. The contestants were comprised of 4 YouTube creators, including Stuart Ashen, and the episode can be viewed freely on his channel on YouTube. And the latest news in 2024 is a brand new ZX Spectrum game based on the TV show from Sausageware Games. It's available now for £12 on cassette, and you can see what it's like for yourself on the Sausageware website. You can find links to all the videos and materials I've just mentioned here in the description. So what do you remember most about Knightmare? Was it too cheesy for you and your cool friends, or was it the height of futuristic computer-generated entertainment? Whatever your opinions, post them in the comments and we'll get the conversation going. And if you want to be featured in a future retrospectives video, keep an eye on my various social media platforms where I'll be asking for your contributions whenever I'm working on something new. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee tip jar if you'd like to say thanks with a small gesture. You'll find all the links in the video description. So that's a wrap for now, but before we go, I'd like to thank everyone who shared their comments, to thank you for liking and subscribing, and of course to wish you all a happy Retrospectives Halloween.